Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Mitch Piper, National Membership Director here at the American Society of Tax Problem Solvers. It's kind of like Ohio State, where they say the Ohio State University. It's the American Society of Tax Problem Solvers. Today, we are going to be talking about how to get IRS transcripts instantly without a 2848 or an 8821 with Roger Nemeth, from the founder of Tax Help Software. And I really don't have much to say today because this one is not for continuing education. We decided to do this presentation because it's a really cool feature of Roger's software that's coming out. And it's also an alternative if the government happens to get shut down, or something like that in the future happens, which will probably happen again. So it's just another tool for your toolbox and something that we thought you ought to know about. The only thing is, if you're listening, we're going to show two videos. I believe we're going to show them at the end of the presentation. They're going to be video demos that Roger recorded earlier. In order to hear those, you will need to have to be on the computer and listening through your computer audio. Other than that, if you're on the phone, you should be able to hear the rest of the presentation. And I guess we're going to send out the videos after the presentation today or tomorrow, so you'll be able to get a chance to watch them again. ASTPS stuff, all of our registrations are open for all of our events. The Baltimore Boot Camp, actually, our first event of the year, is going to be May 15th through 17th. And that one's about, I would say, I think it's like 20% full already. So, I mean, we're a quarter of the way there pretty much with that one. A lot of early registrations, a lot of interest. So if you have any interest in any of these boot camps, or our new academy course, that they have to have gone to the boot camp and have experience to attend. That one's going to be, the first academy is also going to be in Baltimore, June 5th and 6th. And then the Los Angeles boot camp on the West Coast is going to be June 19th through the 21st. So those are the first couple events. So if you have any interest in those, I would highly recommend that you go over and put your deposits down after the presentation today. That way you don't have to worry about it if you forget about it when you get busy for the rest of the month. You don't have to worry about coming out of tax season and stuff being almost sold out. So I guess that's it. If you, like I said, that just a reminder for those of you guys who just logged on in the last minute or so, this one's not for continuing education credit. It's just going to be a presentation to teach you about a new tool that's available out there and give you an alternative to pull transcripts. So Roger, you ready to get started?
Yep, absolutely. So obviously this has been the goal that everybody's had for a long time, is to get the IRS transcripts the day the client walks in your office. This is not a direct replacement for e-services. You're still going to get a bulk of your transcripts that way. But during the federal shutdown, we had a lot of people that called up and said, look, I need a way, I don't have a POA on file to pull these. Specifically, I had a bankruptcy attorney that had to get them pulled or they were going to have to withdraw the bankruptcy. And the federal courts were still open for a little while because they still had some extra money, I guess. And he was able to do it with Get Transcripts. Well, we've had this code kind of sitting where we hadn't used it for a couple of years. So we decided to bring it out. We kind of anticipated there to be a second shutdown. That's kind of where things looked like they were headed for a while. There ended up not being a shutdown, but we decided to go ahead and release the product anyway. If you don't use the product, this will still be beneficial if you ever find yourself in need of getting transcripts. It'll just take obviously longer to download them, and you won't get the report that comes from getting the transcripts. So there's a lot of value in here, even if you're not a THS user. Just to let you know, it's not specifically a product demo. The demo won't be until the very end. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started because there's a lot of interesting things that I kind of found from some old IRS presentations about the online accounts. Those that don't know me, my name is Roger Nemeth. I'm an enrolled agent. I'm also an ASTPS member, NTPI fellow. Started managing tax franchises in 2006, developed Audit Detective, the transcript analyzer, in 2010, qualified as the NTPI fellow in 2015, worked as a programmer for the largest tax resolution company, integrating automated transcript systems into workflow programs. That's where a bulk of my knowledge comes from. Is just for about a decade now, I've done nothing but work with IRS transcripts. I've assisted in the downloading and research of over 30 million transcripts. That was at the large resolution firm. And then to date, our software that we sell to tax professionals has been used to download just over 1/5 of a billion transcripts. It's an estimated number. We're fairly confident that number is correct. Since the company that I was originally with has now downloaded over 120 million just on their own, conservatively, we think we're over 200 billion transcripts downloaded. And we don't see any of those transcripts. Those are all located on your computer. None of it goes through our servers. It's all direct IRS to you. So let's start out with the dream. All right, so tax professionals have had the dream to be able to get IRS transcripts immediately during initial client interactions to better serve them. For tax preparers to be able to get the IRS wage and income transcripts during tax prep, or the tax resolution professionals to be able to determine exactly what the client needs on the initial interaction has always been the goal. Although the solution in this presentation is far from ideal, it does allow tax pros to assist their clients in accessing transcripts in less than 10 minutes in some cases. It was also the only working system at the IRS during the government shutdown. Even now in the post-shutdown, 2848 and 8821 processing delays, still currently 3 to 4 weeks, this is a viable solution for some. THS users will even be able to generate a transcript report from the transcripts obtained through this process. I don't really talk about it in the presentation, but the transcripts downloaded through Get Transcripts, which we'll talk about in just a second, are in a different encrypted format than the ones that come through e-services. So it is very difficult to get the data out of them. It took me about a year to figure it out back 3 or 4 years ago, but we've been able to do it. And you basically will get the same exact tax help software report you get from e-service reports that you would from Get Transcripts. The only limitation is you can only get 10 years of transcripts, and there's no separate assessments, civil penalties, or wage and income summaries. It's only the base transcripts, the account, the return, and the wage and income forms. Okay. So about this course. This course will cover the IRS Get Transcript System and the best practices for assisting taxpayers signing up for the online IRS account. A THS demo is part of the presentation, but users will learn how to use this feature without software as well. Bonus material. So at the end of the Get Transcript presentation, I will cover the unredacted transcript policy and procedures at the IRS, and also kind of how it's the Wild West right now, and it kind of depends on who you get on the phone as to what the results will be. All right. So the THS Get Transcript feature. The THS Get Transcript feature is now available as a standard feature in the executive product only. We will cover the product demo near the end of the presentation. It's been out now for about 2 weeks, and we've had some positive feedback from it so far. If you can get the client to register successfully, it's been a fantastic option. If you can't pass the validation, then obviously it's just a little bit of wasted time. And that's what the presentation is about, is we're going to teach you how to better qualify if your client should even try to go through the registration process. So the handouts. I don't have any handouts reference Get Transcripts other than the slides for the presentation, which Mitch has provided with the invitations. But we do have the IRS memo on unredacted transcript procedures. Hadn't been published yet, but we were able to find it where it was on the IRS website, kind of hidden, buried deep in their download section. And this is what defines the current policies. I think it was an AST TPS member that had reached out to me and basically said, hey, this IRM is being quoted every time I call. We were able to find the adjusted memo that adjusts that IRM, which is not public yet. And this will explain to you which transcripts you can get unredacted per the policy. So IRS Get Transcript Background. IRS Get Transcripts is an online or an IRS online feature available to all taxpayers on irs.gov that allows taxpayers to access their own transcripts. And just to make sure you understand, tax pros can access as well, but this is something that any taxpayer with a social security number can access. Okay. The taxpayers have been able to request transcripts be mailed to them for about 10 years. In 2014, the IRS started allowing taxpayers to download their transcripts online after creating an IRS online account and verifying their identity. This has been utilized primarily for student aid, financial aid, and mortgages. A couple different ways to get transcripts for mortgages, but this is one of the ways that folks have been doing it. That's also why we believe that the Get Transcript transcripts are encrypted. Currently, I can download a transcript from IRC services with what I know, and I can change all the figures on the transcript and just resave it, and nobody would know the difference. So I could basically up my income to do mortgage fraud, right? With these encrypted PDF transcripts from Get Transcripts, they don't allow changes. I can't even go in and change them. I haven't figured out how to modify them. I've only figured out how to read them. And that's what we pull the data in. So the big problem with Get Transcripts came around May 2015. The IRS discovered a security vulnerability that allowed 700,000 taxpayers' accounts to be accessed by cyber criminals, and the feature was suspended. Okay, but let's be clear on this. The IRS was not hacked, but cyber criminals were able to answer the ID verification question successfully because the information was available on the dark web from numerous other website hacks. Companies that were hacked, including Blue Cross, Blue Shield, OPM, which is the U.S. Government Office of Personnel Management, Equifax, and numerous others. Equifax got hacked, and they were the ones that were doing the validations with the credit reporting questions. So the IRS didn't get violated. They built a security protocol that was as strong as the free credit report portals were. The problem was that data is all out there. And just to give everybody a little bit of a scare, the credit reporting companies still use the validations, which is the credit report questions to validate who you are, the same ones where the IRS had 700,000 accounts compromised. So I assure you that all of these people that were going in and getting this data from the IRS are now going to my free tax report, or I'm sorry, my free credit report, and pulling people's credit because they have all the answers to the questions. So kind of find it unusual that the credit reporting companies are for profit. They've basically accepted that, hey, there's going to be a certain level that we're willing to live with. The IRS has basically said we're looking for a zero hack option, which is why it's been a little bit harder to get transcripts lately, is because the IRS is trying to plug every single hole 100%. The online Get Transcript interface was relaunched in June of 2016. The new system uses an enhanced authentication process, which we will discuss later in this presentation. IRS Taxpayer Online Account Features. All right, there are several services a taxpayer can access with an IRS verified online account. The first one is IRS Get Transcripts. The next one is the online payment agreement, which for some reason is currently offline. I don't think it's a hack. I think they're probably just working on it during tax season. This can also be accessed by a tax professional who has 2848 authority for the taxpayer. This is a great way to get an installment agreement set up without talking to anyone at the IRS and completing a 433. You'll notice when I go over the requirements, though, it doesn't cover the installment agreements up to 100. The limit on the OPA, at least the instructions that are still on the website, is you have to owe $50,000 or less in combined tax, penalties, and interest, and filed all required returns. The short-term payment plan is if you owe less than 100,000 in combined tax, penalties, and interest, but it's a much shorter payment plan. I believe it's 90 or 120 days. The next thing out there that you can do with this online account with the IRS is you can request an identity protection PIN. The IRS IP PIN is a 6-digit number that those of you doing tax returns are probably familiar with. It's assigned to an eligible taxpayer to help prevent the misuse of their Social Security numbers on fraudulent federal income tax returns. Either the IRS can send it to you, or the taxpayer can apply online from themselves. If the IRS assigns you one, it would have been through a CP01A notice, okay? The next feature was in beta last year. I played around with it. It was pretty interesting. Currently, there's still some web shots on the IRS website, and I believe that this one will come back. It's not online right now, but it's view your account information. This feature was in beta last year, currently offline as discussed. It's view your current payoff amount and make payment or set up an installment agreement from the dashboard, okay? Other features are planned in the future. The thing I liked about the view your account information is if a client comes to you and says, how much do I have to write the check for today to pay the IRS off? Just like a car loan or a mortgage, it depends on when the accrued interest was accumulated and added up. So the good news is you can go to this feature when they relaunch it, and it will give you the payoff amount, and you would then be able to say, hey, it's $400,012.06, and they can write the check without you having to make a phone call. Okay, let's go down here. So what I have here is this is a presentation the IRS gave back in 2013 and 2012, but there's a reason I'm showing you this, and this presentation expanded out a little bit. So one of the things that caught my eye was this: the online 433 OIC has been discussed and tested previously. If you see here on the fourth column over where it says offer and compromise, it was launched and in market back in 2013. We've heard grumblings at the IRS that this may come back. So currently, some of the resolution softwares allow you to get an interview from a client or fill it out in the software like THS and then populate the forms, which are then faxed in. We think that the IRS is going to go to an online form just because it makes for a better, more secure transfer of data. We know that the IRS is getting rid of outbound faxes. We also believe the IRS will eventually stop outbound faxing and go to these secure delivery portals. I'll kind of go into that a little bit at the end when we talk about unredacted transcripts. But as you see, the other things in blue were already deployed. Where's my refund tracker and where's my amended return tracker? Okay, some of this other stuff was future state, okay, but it has since come up and become the way it is. I also like column number 5, because what they're talking about doing in online services is secure one- and two-way communications and live chats with the IRS. But that's also some of the betas that we've seen and heard of. That's also communications between a tax professional and possibly the ROs or the examiners. And then you have virtual service delivery online. I honestly think there may be a space in time where the IRS makes taxpayers get an online account. And then when the tax return is submitted, it'll have to be verified through that online account. The online account, in essence, is being used by the IRS as your signature. Okay. And I'll talk about that a little farther down the road, because the IRS has talked about doing power of attorneys through this online service initiative. Okay. So in 2018, the IRS e-services account, so the one that all of you tax professionals have, has become the same or merged with the taxpayer's online account. They're the same account now. You can, in essence, go in and log in to Get Transcripts right now using your e-service credentials and pull your own transcripts. Okay. If you go into e-services and you haven't filed a POA or an 8821 on yourself, you won't get the transcripts. You have to have a POA or 8821 on yourself. So taxpayers and tax pros go through the exact same process to create a verified IRS online account. And I know that, some of us struggle to get through that process. So tax pros not only can access everything with their account that we talked about for taxpayers, but these enhanced features for tax professionals. The first one is obviously the transcript delivery system. There's also e-file application. That's how you apply for an EFIN. TIN matching. That's basically if I have to send out 1,000 1099s, I need to make sure that the socials match the names on those forms, or I can get penalties for not issuing 1099s correctly. That's what the TIN matching program is. Most of you don't use it, but just to share with you what it is. And then now the new one that's kind of been around that's making a resurgence is it gives you access to the e-services mailbox, AKA the secure object repository. They are the same, they mean the same thing. If you don't believe me or believe this, on the IRS e-services page to the right, they advise you to go to Get Transcripts profile to modify an existing registration. If you need to change your password, you cannot do it from inside transcript delivery system or e-file application. You actually have to go over here to Get Transcript online and go into your Get Transcript profile in order to do that. Those of you that have added the app for the two-factor authentication, you also do that through Get Transcript. Okay, kind of odd, you have to go through the Get Transcript, but what we think they're grooming the Get Transcript login for is to be your generic main online. So in the future, we believe when you log into the your account, you're going to see a dashboard. Even if you're just logging into transcript delivery system, you're going to log in and it's going to show all your tax history. So those of you that are sharing your password and credentials with your your staff, that may be a time to rethink sharing credentials with your staff, especially if they're going to be able to see what your AGI is for the past 10 years. Okay. Don't know 100% that's where they're going. It just looks like that's how the IRS is setting this up to be, because when you log in from the main dashboard, that data will be purviewed out there currently. Okay. Next page. All right, so can you guess the online registration success rate? And I know Jeff Johnson, who's on the call, is probably rolling his eyes in San Francisco because it's not very great, okay? It is 28%. So I laugh at this because when we met with the IRS last year, they were telling us, hey, the success rate is under 40%. So everybody at the table, there were other people than me, so there were some pretty smart people there. They basically said, what does under 40% mean? Under 40% could mean 2%. Give us a little bit better idea. They wouldn't give us a better idea, but since then, other presentations that the IRS has done at the forums, the number that's made itself out into the community that I'm kind of a part of that interact with the IRS and the programming, we fully believe it to be at 28%, whether you're a tax professional or a taxpayer trying to confirm yourself through the enhanced identity, through the online process 100% that doesn't require a letter in 10 days, only 1 out of 4 people is succeeding with that, okay? Purpose of this presentation is to get that number up. The other thing is we were on the focus group about how to validate people's identity, and there's some interesting things coming down the pike that will actually make this number go up. We think in the next maybe 12 to 24 months that this number is going to go north of 50% and probably closer to 75%, because it's very difficult to use something that's 1 out of every 4 people will pass. But we're going to also give you some tools where you're not trying to do this online process for people that aren't going to pass. So kind of a pre-qualification kind of thing. So the IRS is committed to online services. One other thing about the 28%, if the government goes to another shutdown and you're trying to validate somebody to get transcripts because you just got to have them and that's your only option, the system at the IRS to where if the cell phone wouldn't verify and it sent you a letter, the letter was actually an automated system. And we did get reports where the letter was received in 4 or 5 days after the online system failed. So they go online, couldn't verify the phone. The IRS did still send the letter with the code, and people were able to log in during the government shutdown without a POA. So currently, if you've got a client that's maybe getting levied, you really don't want to call and talk to somebody at the IRS and wake them to some facts, you may want to get on with your client. If they can't validate their phone, ask for the letter and you can still get in under the radar without a human being ever opening that account. Because be advised, if you ever call the practitioner hotline, those people have the ability to make referrals to other departments at the IRS. If they see a CSET about to expire, or you slip and say something that probably shouldn't have said, or the client, they can refer it somewhere else. So just keep that in mind. We think there's too many transcripts, being downloaded from e-services where they would look at them and say, oh, somebody pulled John Smith's e-service transcripts. Let's take a look at that account. People are pulling for mortgage, financial aid. So I'd be willing to bet a paycheck, $1,000, whatever you want to bet, that nobody is looking at what's being downloaded online other than the sheer numbers. Okay. So even with the current dismal success rate of online registration, it will get better. For those that are waiting for the IRS to create a new online 2848 or 8821. So I know there's people out there that have been like, you know what? I know the IRS is working on an online way to do the 2848 and 8821. It's been discussed. Just be advised of this. The IRS version that has the taxpayer create and validate the same online account they need for Get Transcripts. In 2 years, when the IRS releases the online POA, THS users will have had access for 2 years in advance. The pilot with screenshots that I have seen in focus groups is to do an online POA, your client will need to create this online account for Get Transcripts, and in essence, put in either some kind of identifying number, maybe your CAF number or some other number. I saw a mock-up for the mortgage providers, and it was basically another identification number that was different than CAF and those kind of things that they would give you. So when you logged in, you would put it in, giving them permission to pull transcripts. So it's a cumbersome system. So if you're waiting for that, this is that. It's just 2 years in advance. Okay. Now, over 300,000 tax professionals have been able to successfully register for the new system. According to some of the IRS documentation out there, 300,000 tax pros were able to convert their e-services accounts over to the new credentialed system. And I can tell you, Laura in our office probably talked to 299,000 of those people, because we did a lot of interacting with people to help them get through that process. Obviously, we didn't talk to that many, but I think our phone calls, we looked at our VoIP system, and at one point, over a 5 or 6 month period, we had answered over 7,000 phone calls and probably most of those were, I can't get into my IRS account. So we were able to help just a number of people get through. That same experience is what we're using in this presentation to help your clients with improved login. All right. And the IRS cannot afford to keep interacting with the public at the current levels. They need to rely on automation. Okay. And this is what I thought was the most interesting. In its fiscal year 2018 to 2022 strategic plan, IRS estimate that it costs $42 to interact with a taxpayer over the phone, $57 through mail correspondence, $68 at a taxpayer assistance center. So when you decide that you need some unredacted wage and income transcripts, that's costing the IRS $42. If they would just let us pull them the old way, it's 20 cents. Okay. And let me just remind everybody, this is y'all's government and this is how they're running. That is a lot of money that is being spent that doesn't need to be spent. I've always told people at these kind of things, if Amazon ran the IRS, it would be a much better process. Okay. Yes, some accounts would get compromised, but at the end of the day, everything would be much better. And anybody out there that doesn't think that their stuff's already on the dark web, I honestly think everybody's information is already out there. It's just a matter of how much of your information's out there. There have been way too many hacks for our information not to be out on the web. It's no longer a factor, what do I do if my information gets out? It's how to protect my information from being used when it's not authorized, okay? So I wonder what the cost is to process an 8821 or a 2848. I would love to see that number, and it's got to be somewhere between, I would have to guess it's $35, because a phone interaction probably takes on average 6 minutes with the IRS, and I'm talking about on average. I'm sure that statistic's out there. I know how long it takes me to create an 8821. So my wondering would be for the IRS to type that exact information into the computer. It's got to take them at least 5 minutes to validate, type it in, confirm you typed it in right, look at the signatures, and go. So I would imagine they're probably processing on average, probably somewhere close to, I don't know, maybe 20 an hour per person. Really not a whole lot of people processing the 8821s and the 2848s. They let us do it ourselves, 20 cents per digital transaction. But also in the strategic plan, this is why the IRS is committed to more online and digital interactions with the public, okay? And you as a tax professional are considered the public as far as this goes. And so the future state policy is to address these costs. The IRS has acknowledged the problem, and the future state is what it is. There's a lot of information on where this system is going in the next couple of years, and that's why we're covering the future state. So from the IRS.gov, while the IRS future state was a long-term visioning effort, the fiscal year 2018 to 2022 IRS strategic plan guides the implementation of the IRS vision for the future through our programs and operations. It reflects the aspirational yet actionable work IRS is doing that will fulfill our mission. Basically, what the strategic plan is where they're applying the funding dollars and where they're asking for the money, okay? From the IRS strategic plan. To guide how we're going to get there, we being the IRS, 6 strategic themes and a focus area of strengthening cybersecurity and eliminating identity theft. The themes are: facilitate voluntary compliance by empowering taxpayers with secure, innovative tools and support. Well, if only 28% of the people can validate themselves, that one is failing miserably, okay? Number 2, understand non-compliant taxpayer behavior and develop approaches to deter and change it. Number 3, leverage and collaborate with external stakeholders. Hey, that's us. That's tax professionals. We made the list. But let me kind of pop everybody's bubble. 3-4 years ago, we had an online POA. The IRS unilaterally, without reaching out to anybody in the tax professional community, killed it. Okay. Last year, they decided to unilaterally say, hey, you don't need redacted or unredacted transcripts. Killed them without any influence from the external stakeholders, with the exception of the mortgage industry, who said, yes, we can still issue a mortgage with a redacted transcript, so it doesn't affect us. So just to give you an idea where us as external stakeholders lie, we are at the very, very bottom. Okay. So number 4, cultivate a well-equipped, diverse, skilled, and flexible workforce. Well, we all know that the government shutdown didn't do anything to help that. A lot of people retired early, and people just don't want to work at the IRS because how do you know you're going to get paid if they have more of these government shutdowns? And it's nothing but data entry for the most part for a lot of these folks, which has just got to be the mind-numbing work. So number 5, select the highest value work using data analytics and robust feedback loop. Not really sure what that means because they have zero data analytics. We've been analyzing how they do audits and all this, and it's even more simplistic than we thought originally. I'm currently writing the code that replicates the CP2000, so you'll be able to check if your client filed enough in May. And it was very, very rudimentary how they're doing the initial checks. Most of the CP2000 check is done by a human being after the initial flag. So they're having issues with their system. Honestly, I think number 4, if you were to ask Amazon does have diverse, skilled, and flexible workforce. But I can tell you, Amazon is working on the best solution out there. They're automating their systems, whereas I think the IRS focuses on keeping employment high and not automating as much as a corporation would. All right, and now the last one. Drive more agility, efficiency, and effectiveness in IRS operations. I think they need to change this one from drive more agility to create some agility, efficiency, and effectiveness in the IRS operations. I think they're starting from 0 with this, honestly. So it is a ways to go, but there is money coming into the pipeline to work on some of these features. Here's another presentation from the tax forum. I think this is from the one last year or the year before, but it's still active. Yeah, here it is from 2016, but I know they gave the same presentation last year. And some of this is coming to fruition. This is just kind of the quick screenshot, and you guys again have all these slides. Tax professionals are over here in the lower right-hand corner. More efficient operations, coordination across business units and partners. When they talk about partners, though, they lean more towards the software providers for the 1040 and the mortgage industry, not necessarily enrolled agents, CPAs, and attorneys. Okay, it's just kind of a way of putting what we already talked about into a fancy PowerPoint slide, but thought I would provide it there for you. I thought this one was funny at the bottom. Timely resolution of issues. Errors are detected at the time of filing, and taxpayers are given early notification to correct the issues. Well, for example, THS currently hits the audit flag 6 months before they start looking at it and getting the audit going. So in essence, we already have people that are doing where the IRS sees themselves going to. One of the things, and I think I've got a slide in here from it, it was from one of these presentations. What the IRS is talking about doing is this one, number 4, right? It's taxpayer self-correction. Some of the screenshots and the things that I looked at, what they talked about doing was probably CP2000 primarily. They would flag the account in June and say, hey, you're missing a little, some wage and income. Why don't you do something with that? The demo I kind of saw, the screenshots implied that the client would be able to log in through the Get Transcript portal, go into that IRS account page, and basically adjust their tax return and probably make a payment if money was due right there on the spot. And that would completely automate the system. Think about if the IRS sent out a general reminder to you saying, hey, our computer flagged that the income mismatched on your return. If it's not one of the exceptions, then let us know what exception it is. Let us on this end figure out the problem, it would save the IRS a ton of money, because most people would say, oh, here's my wage and income transcript. Oh, I forgot unemployment. I completely forgot $5,000 of unemployment. Let me go ahead and do an amended return. Whoops, I owe $500. Let me either get into an installment agreement. All that can be automated, and the IRS is looking at doing pilots for that. So as enrolled agents, CPAs, and attorneys, if you see where this is going, the IRS is trying to bypass us servicing the client and provide all these easier interfaces directly to them. So part of this class is what it's kind of rotated to is make sure you get and learn how to start integrating with your client these interactions, because you might have to start logging into the client's account with them to do 433s in the future. So, those that get on early, I think this is going to be the next wave of how to do this. I don't think your client's going to bypass you on much, but there is some easy stuff that they probably will. Okay. They really don't need you if they owe $1,500 on a CP2000 to get into an online installment agreement. Okay. They just basically want you to tell them that, yes, there's no way out of it. Let's go ahead and get you in an installment agreement. Okay. So we need to start working with the clients on their interface, since the IRS is not working on enhancing the Tax Pros tools. So funny story, the IRS was across from me at 2 of the IRS forums I went to this year. Okay, there I am, Tax Help Software, these fantastic reports. So there's the guy sitting across from me showing all these tax professionals what the IRS is planning. A lot of it was stuff that came from basically from Tax Help Software. And just to give you an idea of that, the man was showing me how, hey, we're going to have the ability where you can upload a list of social security numbers, and we'll tell you if the client has CAF, or if you have CAF authority for these socials. Well, that's how Tax Help Software does it. Why would the IRS need a list of socials to see who you have CAF on? They have the ability to say, if you go into your dashboard, to say, hey, show me my list of who I have POA and 8821 on. When I told that guy that, he goes, oh, you're right. They've been going around to everybody's websites that does stuff with transcripts and trying to build something out. So when I kind of grilled him on it, and I said, oh, how much is in the budget for this? He goes, all the money is for the taxpayer portal. Not one penny has been spent on a taxpayer's improved portal. You've seen these services. The only changes that have been made are the making of the security. And what did they do with that? They basically gave our login. They basically just use what they created for the tax, payers themselves. So there's no money coming into this. So do not hope that there will be a POA where you go into your dashboard and say, oh, I want to work on John Smith's 433 in my dashboard and submit it to the IRS. Unfortunately, I think the way this is migrating, you're going to have to be able to log into the client's account and either talk them through it or do it that way. Okay. Is it going to happen next year? Is it going to happen in 2 years? I don't know, but that seems to be the path that they're going down. If they do that, I can tell you, we've interacted enough with the IRS website. We would still have you fill the 433 questions out, modified to how their online system is. And then we would just simply go through and put all that data into the IRS for you automatically. So you wouldn't have to sit there with a client. The client would basically either come to your office or through the portal that'll be launching through THS. They would be able to put their security code in, and then you'd say, okay, upload the 433 info. And that way it would do it without the client having to actually put the data in. So that's just some of the ways that this is heading. The IRS beta tested a taxpayer dashboard where they could view basic account information last year, like we discussed. Some of the proposed features for taxpayers include allowing them to make the small changes to their return online. There is nothing in the proposals to make that available to tax pros. Many tax professionals have advised they would not allow the client to create an online account because they believe the client could bypass their services. I don't believe this to be the case. I believe the IRS will force taxpayers to get the online account to validate the returns prior to filing. Maybe not every tax payer, but possibly those with ID theft and other issues. Maybe if your refund's over 10 grand, they want you to go in and be able to validate that it's you that filed through this online secure. They've basically said that by creating a secure online account, that is your signature and your identity. for the IRS. Eventually, the online validation will become the signature of the return. I don't know 100% that that's going to happen, but that's where the IRS is heading. So here's a screenshot from the current IRS website about how they still have this listed as a feature. Okay. They even say it's available, but every time I tried to log into it, I couldn't. So this is the IRS view account information. Okay. And what it has up here in this definition is your payoff amount updated for the current calendar day, the balance for each tax year for which you owe, up to 24 months of payment history, and key information from your current tax year return as originally filed. Basically, they're trying to do a very, very basic tax help software dashboard. That's what this looks like in its final thing. Now, it doesn't say, are they in exam, are they in collections, any of that, or any of the details. It's just very, very basic information, okay? And also, over here on the left, it also has third-party authorizations, okay? That's why we strongly suspect, plus we've seen the screenshots of the pilot program already, the IRS is actually looking at the third-party authorization through this interface. We had a user that got on a focus group for the online POA, and after the IRS presented all the scariness of identity theft, the person on that board said it was almost a unanimous vote that there shouldn't be an online POA. Well, the thing that bothers me about that, they had not a whole lot of stakeholders. They didn't have any of the big resolution firms. They didn't have, we weren't on there. I mean, even if, you know, the other people that do what we do, let us all go in so we can share with you the best way to do this. The IRS basically scared the heck out of a group of people and then said, oh, gee, what do you think about this? And they basically said, ooh, let's not do this, okay? If I would have been in there, I'd have been like, all you're doing is solving the validation problem, okay? The IRS will scare you that any system is breachable, and they're correct, but you still have to proceed and do business. It's nothing is going to be 100%. So here's another screenshot of the IRS View Account prototype from 2013. You see they have the online payment agreement, the ACH debit payment, where's my refund, and the Vital Locator. These four are all in the app, I think. I think the OPA is in there. It may or may not be, but you can access it online. But I know that you can make a payment to the IRS through the app, where's my refund, and the Vital Locator. There's also some speculation that the IRS To Go app may actually become your signature at the IRS. You may actually get a text that says, hey, did you just file your return? Yes, I did, submit it. So they're also looking at cell phones and devices as being it. So also you see the print transcripts, the download the secure PDF, and the export to Excel, okay? And here's your tax return data down here at the bottom of the page. So that's where the IRS is thinking they want to go. The good news is I know they've got issues to overcome long before they get to that. Account registration best practices. All right, so this is where we get into, I'm going to train you what we've learned from helping tax professionals log in, how you can help your clients. So last year when the IRS forced 300,000 tax pros to go through the new enhanced verification processes, the staff at Tax Help Software got very good at getting tax pros through the process successfully. These same best practices are now being shared with you to do the same with your own clients if you choose to do so. If the online account registration fails, the taxpayer can still validate their identity, but it will take some time so the IRS can send a letter to their last known address with a validation code. The good news is the last two people I've talked to that did this, they got the validation code in 3 to 4 days. It says within 10 days, but it also has the little sign for less than in front of the 10 days. So I think what's happening based on what I know about the system is if my registration fails, the system immediately generates the letter and it goes in the mail the next business day. Just a feeling of how this happened. You know, the people that during the shutdown let me know how quick it was, because I know when I sent the email when they tried, and I know when they responded and said, hey, client got the letter today, and one was 3 days, one was 4 days. So that's also an option, because honestly, that would be quicker than trying to get a power of attorney or an 8821 process now. I think by April, they'll get through the backlog and we'll go back to our 3 to 5 business days. But you know, right now that's where it sits at. So I recommend you pre-qualify your client. So if you want to go through Get Transcripts, so let's say you're a tax resolution client, somebody comes in, hey, it's going to be 4 weeks before I can get your data from the IRS, or 3 weeks before I can get your account from the IRS. They're stopping faxing transcripts. You pre-qualify your client, all right? You say, hey, I might be able to get access today while you're here, but let me ask you a couple questions, all right? So do the following. And all of this that you see here, if you're a tax help software user, this actually pops up when you start to go through the process. Not yet. The first stage of our release was, hey, here's the Get Transcript tool. Right now, we don't do anything with registration. We are going to have a little pop-up screen in your software, so when the customer's sitting with you, you would pop this up for them, or as they sit across the desk from you, you would ask them the questions and type the information in. So check with your client and determine if they have the information for the online account. First, taxpayer must have a US-based mobile phone that matches the name on the account, not the caller ID. Phones registered in the business name, landlines, VoIP phones, prepaid phones, and virtual phones like Google Voice, Skype will not verify in the system, okay? I know some of you have actually used some of those phones, but what you had to do is wait 10 days for the letter with the confirmation code. And in that case, you can then verify a cell phone in a business name or a Google Voice number, but you can't do it through the online process the first day with the client sitting in front of you. So let's say the client says, yes, I have a Verizon account, it's in my name. The next question is, do you have a credit card in your name that is not a prepaid card, a debit card, an American Express card, or a business card, okay? If they do, there you go. I recommend Visa or MasterCard, but Discover does work as well, but I know for a fact Visa and MasterCard has always worked, okay? In lieu of a credit card, you can try the account numbers for a home mortgage, home equity loan, home equity line of credit, student loan, or a car loan. I do know that people have had trouble verifying those in the system. So when you have it, use the Visa or MasterCard. And if I remember correctly on the registration process, if you put it in and it says your information doesn't match, you can always try either a different credit card or an account number. So it gives you a couple bites at the apples, but please don't try the same thing over and over again. So if a Visa card doesn't work the first time, don't use the Visa card the second time unless you know you put it in wrong, okay? We get that all the time with people trying to put their passwords in, and they keep putting the wrong password in 5 times because their caps lock's on or they forgot it. So they'll try the same exact password 5 times, lock themselves out. Don't keep doing the same behavior over and over and over again. It's never ends good. Okay. They also need a readily available email address. So let's say you have Grandma Jones comes in, she has a cell phone, she has her jitterbug, it's in her name, she has a credit card, she's had it forever, but she doesn't have an email address. Okay. Now it's going to be rare that people don't have email addresses, but I know that you can go in, create a new email address, and it will work the same day at the same time you're registering for the IRS. We've done that a bunch of times. Okay. They have to have a social security number. So for those of you that help folks with ITINs do not work, okay? They must have filed a return in the last 7 years, right? And know the last filing status of the last return filed. There is a 6-week delay before current returns show up in the system. So if you're doing this for somebody right now and you filed last week, you actually need to put the filing status for last year's return, not this year's. Now, if that one fails, then do try the current year return. I think every one of these screens gives you 2 or 3 bites at the apple. So again, don't keep trying to put married, file, and joint if it keeps failing and you were single last year. Switch it up. Okay. Number 6, if the taxpayer has a credit freeze with Experian, it will need to be temporarily lifted before an attempt is made. There's no way that you can check externally other than by going to My Free Credit Report and pulling it up to see if you can access the data. Okay. So the biggest one is, do you have a phone number in your name? In other words, is the bill in your name? We do have some feedback from some people that said that they've actually called their phone companies and said, I need my name to be associated with the account, even though this is a business account. And we need to test that further, but that may be an option, which we would send out to all our users future. I've got a couple people trying to get phones that didn't verify the first time to call their cell phone companies with a list of instructions we found to see if you can link or at least force an update to the database where your account name is associated with your name that the credit reporting agencies have. And that's how they're checking the name on the phone number, okay? So that's it. If they meet the top 3 or top 4, 5, yeah, I mean, they pretty much have to file a return, but this is the list here. Okay, cell phone, credit card, email address, social. And some of these are given. They have an email address. They have a social. They may or may not filed in the past 7 years, and the credit freeze is a big unknown. Okay. Reason for registration failures. All right. The 3 primary reasons online registration fails is the cell phone. From what we've heard from folks, it's over 90%. Okay. The taxpayer chooses a credit card that does not qualify, Amex, debit card, etc., and it just fails. And they keep trying the same one over and over. And then the other one is the credit freeze with Experian. It might also be your address doesn't match, but we're not sure if they're using the address or not. It's very hard to validate an address, especially like for Miami. Those of you in Miami know why. Because you can have 125th Northeast 3rd Street and it gets apartment 1275. You can use commas in there, so it's very hard to match addresses. So we think that the IRS checks these other things first and then may use the address as a last ditch effort, or they may just be checking the numeric numbers in the address, but try to make sure the address is the current address that the client has, but we're not sure if that leads to failures yet or not, but we should coming up here as we get more feedback. By using the following best practices, you can vastly improve your client's chances of successful registration. So now we're going to kind of go through the different tips. If the client does not have a cell phone with the account in their name, they will not be able to validate online. If the taxpayer is married, you can try both cell phones. In other words, you can try one for the husband and one for the wife. The only difference in their transcripts if they're married filing joint would be the wage and income, but most times you just need the account transcripts if you're doing resolution. If you're doing the tax return, obviously it doesn't do you any good because you need the wage and income. Landlines, VoIP phones, prepaid phones, and virtual phones like Google Voice will not verify in the system. If the taxpayer does not have a cell phone in their name, they can request a letter with a confirmation code be sent to their address on their last filed return. The problem with getting the certification code is it's the address the IRS has in their system. You can't go in and modify it. Yes, you can go in and do a change of address, but in our experience, it's taken at least 6 weeks for that to update the system. So that is not a fast way to get this done. THS has created a feature in the software that will check the client's account name on the phone. The account name and the caller ID are different. Users can control the caller ID in their cell phone accounts. By checking the cell phone in advance, you can save time and determine if it's worth trying. This app will be released on or before April 15th. Okay, we got a couple more things we want to do with it, and there is a fee that we have to pay for it. We're not passing that along to our end users, but we also want to make sure that somebody doesn't get in and check 1,000 names because that would cost us some money. Basically, we would then lose money on anything that we sold you as a product. So the THS cell phone verification tool takes it one step. You would be able to say, okay, Mr. Taxpayer, I have a way I might be able to get transcripts. Let me get your cell phone and check to see the name associated with the account. So I told you earlier that the registration interface that we're building into THS, again, is not in there today, but will be in there shortly. When you start to do the registration process, we show you everything that's needed with the tips in this presentation in this screen. So this is your quick pre-qualifier right here, okay? The second part of this is the phone number. I'll show you on the next page. This tool, and I know this says 10 days. I didn't get a chance to change it. We updated it to April 15th. I'm actually going on vacation next week and haven't been on vacation in almost 18 months. So I got to go on vacation. I don't want to launch a new feature until I get back. Laura and Fred and everybody will still be here, but I don't want to push this update until I'm back, and I'll be back the last week in March. This tool should be used to validate the taxpayer's cell phone is in their name before attempting to register. We will not know how effective the validation is until a larger number of phone numbers is checked through the system. During our initial testing with 20 phone numbers, it was a high probability indicator. Everyone that we ran through the system that failed the IRS, their name did not come back on the validation tool. There's different databases to check against out there, but we think we figured out which database the IRS uses with the credit reporting companies to validate the phone number, okay? Who knows? Our next 100 might be a 30% success rate, and we'll have to go check another database, but right now it's been very highly successful. With that being said, with this feature not being launched for another 3 or 4 weeks, if you want to test a client's phone number, or more importantly for us, if one of your clients failed the validation, please send us their phone number and we will see what the name comes back. We don't even need you to send us the customer's name. What we'll do is send you the results that we got from the phone number, and we would want the feedback from you saying, yeah, you're right, that name doesn't match the taxpayer. So that's how we validate these things. So this is what comes back. So when this screen pops up, you'll put the phone number in and hit try. It's going to send a text to that cell phone. So what that does is it prevents us from having people just try 1,000 cell phones that they happen to have in their database to see what the name is that comes back. And we do have users that use scripts against our program, and they can do a lot of stuff like that very quickly. Well, when these cost what they do, it could cost us thousands of dollars if somebody just was running tens of thousands of phone numbers through our tool. So what it does is it sends a text message to your phone before it retrieves the data. It makes sure that the number you put in here, you actually have possession of that phone, or it's there. And this is the data that comes back. So mine came back with Roger Nemeth, first name, last name. I am with Verizon. It is mobile. It's not a commercial account, and it is valid. Okay. Now my wife, nothing came back. Now hers came back Verizon, okay? Well, she's not on my account. We bought her what's called a Straight Talk account, which is kind of a Walmart prepaid account. And you see, it didn't answer if it's prepaid here, okay? So with the prepaid accounts, no name is associated with the account because they kind of buy them as a reseller, so it's not associated, okay? So in this case, no name came up. This one would not validate, and hers did not validate, okay? And that was just 2 of the 20 that we ran, okay? So the rest of the pretty much the presentation is we're gonna walk through the screenshots from the registration process. I see a couple people up here saying, well, how long does the validation process? Jeff Johnson, I think, said it took 15 minutes for him to do it, okay? So basically, if you're an average person, it'll take 5. If you're not average, I'm just little jab there at Jeff. I see him texting over here on the questions. But honestly, the more of these you do, the faster it will go. There's not that much data to put into this, all right? So the first 4 screenshots are what do you need? So here's the first shot. Hey, it's gonna take about 15 minutes. Do you have access to this stuff? Okay. The next page, oh, hey, you need some more information. Well, pretty much everything here is what we show you on our little pre-qualifier, but on one page, okay? You need a mobile device. Okay, we already covered that. So half of this process is just validating that you have enough. So the very first step in the process is you put the name in. So here we have Santa Claus going through and he puts an email address in. Again, if you have to create a Gmail account on the spot, it will work. Okay, you might need to give it 5 minutes or so for it to kind of season just for a second, validate and all that. But what you do is you put the email address in and hit send code. They will then send a code to the email. You take that code that you get in the email and you continue. That validates the email account, okay? For the same reason we send a text to the cell phone, it makes sure that it's in your possession. So next, you enter your data. So here's my brother-in-law. That's who we started to put the data in for. So there's David Register. You put in the date of birth, the social security number, okay? I know it says ITIN, but I don't know anybody that's been able to successfully use it. It also says select filing status from your most recently filed tax return, okay? If you check this other box, this is what you get over here. Not sure what process is if the taxpayer is not filed in the past 7 years. They ask for your current address so they can send an RO by. Well, just kidding, but it is kind of funny. They're like, if you haven't filed in the past 7 years, just send us your address, okay? But that may be what they're asking for. They're asking to update their system so they can start sending all your notice of intent to levies, okay? We're pretty confident that you have to get your address in here. The address help page shows how to do post office boxes and those kind of things, okay? I should have added it. My apologies. I thought I had it, but apparently it's not in here. But it does show you how to format the address, and it's right there on the page, okay? So next, again, we recommend you use the last 8 digits of a credit card, specifically MasterCard or Visa card. And remember, do not use these. Prepaid card, debit card, American Express card, or business company card. They won't work. If they don't have a credit card, you can try any of these others. If you check, I don't have a current credit card, they're going to validate you by sending you the confirmation code to the house. That's just basically, we're not going to continue to validate you. We're going to go to the next step. Okay. Next step. All right. So verify the phone number. All right. So let's start with the second one down, and then I'll talk about this one because it's on the next slide. So the moment of truth. If you see it's only about 15 different data fields, it should literally take 15 minutes for you to do. The hardest part is going into the email, getting the confirmation code, which comes immediately, and off you go. Okay. The moment of truth. If you can get past this next step, you are less than 5 minutes away from 10 years of transcripts. Okay. This was after we tried to validate my brother-in-law. All right. I'm going to talk about that case on the next page. We were unable to verify that this phone number belongs to you with the phone provider, okay? Please double check that your phone number was typed correctly or try a different number. It actually gives you 2 tries before it forces you to the letter, okay? So here's my slam dunk failure. The screenshots on the previous slides came from David, my brother-in-law, allowing me to capture them for the purposes of this presentation. He met all the criteria we listed previously, and the THS cell phone validation tool was not ready yet. David had a cell phone account with Verizon in his name for about 18 months. His cell phone did not validate on the IRS website. That is why I do not have a screenshot of the success screen. When we got the cell phone validation tool to work later on, a name we did not recognize came up in a different city. We believe that the database the IRS is using is not updating when phone numbers have switched users or whatever happens in the process, okay? We are sharing these results with the IRS in an effort that they can improve the process. And that's what we're asking you guys to do, is give us some examples. So if your customer says, sure, you can give my cell phone and my name, and have them report it as something that doesn't work. In his case, we believe that somebody had his number before him and Verizon has never updated it, okay? So David is the one that's going to actually reach out to Verizon. We found some instructions online where they're supposed to be able to update what name shows up in the account database. So we're going to see if that works. And if it works, you can actually do it as an online. That would be an additional instruction that we send out to our users to, basically improve this process and get the cell phones working better. It also lets us go out to the IRS to say, hey, the system you have is horrid. Here's somebody that's had a Verizon phone for 18 months and it can't even validate. So we're going at this from every angle that we can, okay? We're almost done with the presentation. We've got a couple of demos coming up, and I'll show you those demos. We're also going to send out the YouTube links for the demos as well. So if some of you are pressed to get back, I know this is a busy time of year, you'll be able to see those demos, all right? But definitely, please share the failures and the successes you have with cell phone numbers and how they validated with the validation tool when it's released. All right. So the tax help software Get Transcript feature. So everything I've taught you is, hey, you can go in, get these transcripts downloaded and look at them. With the THS Get Transcript feature, this feature is now standard on the Executive product, not available on Pro Plus. This product was launched on February 25th, a soft launch. It's when I kind of put something out, I don't tell you it's out there, or I just generally tell you it's out there so we can get some feedback on it. We are also working, and this is a very important thing here. We've talked about the portal for a while. I promise you it's coming. We're working on some innovative features that nobody's even thought of yet. One of them is the following. So we're working on integrating the Get Transcript function with our portal. When it is released, so your client can request the transcripts through the portal. The transcripts would then be uploaded via the portal, and the THS report would be generated for you to provide to the taxpayer. They would not see the transcripts download unless you provide them. So in other words, in the app, they would basically go through the validation with the IRS as you instruct them through their portal. They would then be able to say, oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and give my tax professional permission to get these transcripts. And they're going to run it, and we're going to run basically a mini version of the THS transcript downloader through the portal. It's going to go to Get Transcripts. It's going to get the transcripts and not give them directly to the client, but it's going to upload them to you through the portal. You'll generate the report and decide if you want to give them to the client. We've listened to what everybody said. You didn't want the client to be able to just go in and get their own stuff. This is how we're going to address that. The second phase of this is we're actually looking at doing this all on an app. You may be able to tell a client, to go in, download the tax help software app, and we might call it something fancier than that, obviously. And what they would be able to do is put their Get Transcript username, password, and validate their cell phone on the app, and the transcripts would upload from their phone to your portal. Okay, pretty interesting stuff that we're working on. And that is a feature that's actively being moved forward as part of the portal. It will not be available during the initial portal release. However, it is something that we've given some priority to because we think there's a need and a desire out there to have that report immediately. All right, so I had the demo here, but I'm going to go cover the unredacted transcripts. Mitch and I are trying the recorded video thing for the first time. So I'm going to get through the presentation, which is just another 2 slides, and then we're going to go ahead and play the 2 demos. And then after that, I'm available for questions. If you have to log off after this before the demos, we'll send the links out in the email later this afternoon. I think we'll make this presentation available, but it does take Mitch some time to upload this. So the link for the presentation may not go out in the email directly following it. So unredacted transcript bonus material. So there's been a lot of misinformation about the IRS policy defining the procedures for providing tax professionals with unredacted, synonymous with unmasked. The provided handout appears to be the latest official policy. Okay, we'll cover that in a minute. We are getting reports that some people are getting 10 years of unredacted transcripts via fax. My dad told me he did last night. And other tax pros cannot even get one. It depends on who you get at the IRS. The training the IRS was going to do was scheduled, but it was never completed due to the government shutdown. When the shutdown ended, we believe the organized training was never done, but the memo and policies did trickle down to all the employees. When this type of event happens, the IRS staff interprets the memo differently. Once tax season is over, we believe the published policies in the memo will become the norm. But until then, you can try what you deem is best. If you want to try to get 20 years of transcripts unredacted, by all means. It's the Wild West right now. Try it. Okay. The presentation handouts at this link. It's also in your handouts. The specific IRM section in the memo is the following. I'm not going to read it off. And it's expanded upon the exception for mass transcripts, revised the form 442 policy or process. So the form 4442, I'll explain to you what it is real quick. The IRS will provide the unredacted transcripts it provides in the exception below here in the narrow scope. But what that IRS form 4442 is, what if a client is trying to get a mortgage and their mortgage provider will not approve them without an unmasked or unredacted wage and income? The IRS instructions in this section are not to provide them with the unredacted transcript. They have to fill this form out saying the client advises they need an unredacted, and they're basically sending it to headquarters for them to review and possibly make those transcripts available to that person on a one-on-one or basically a per case decision. Okay, but this is where the big unredacted exception shows up in the IRM. And I don't think it's in the IRM yet. It's only in the memo, which is an official memo, but the change hasn't been applied yet, if that makes sense. So the exception is this. An unmasked wage and income transcript can be provided to the taxpayer when needed for filing an electronic tax return for the current year or filing electronically for the 2 prior tax years. Only the taxpayer or the taxpayer's power of attorney or the authorized individual for a decedent per the second name line item of entity information can make the request. No other third party can make this request, okay? Again, read power of attorney up there. It doesn't say 8821 or third party release, okay? Currently, I know people are getting unredacted transcripts with 8821s, but that's not how I interpret the final definition, so that may end eventually. If no return was filed, and that's important because I had somebody call me up and say the IRS wouldn't give me an unredacted transcript because they said a return was filed for that tax year. Again, the only reason they're providing these under this exception is so you can e-file the tax return. And picture me doing the air quotes, kind of funny because you can't see me, but I just did them without thinking. All right, so the unmasked transcript can only be mailed to the taxpayer's address of record or to the authorized individual for the decedent. It cannot be faxed. If the taxpayer requests expedited service, provide the toll-free number for the taxpayer to schedule a TAC appointment. Inform the taxpayer the appointment date may not be immediate depending on the office, okay? Where in here does it talk about the mailbox? It doesn't talk about the mailbox specifically, but it is. And provide. The mailbox is in, oops, shot out too far. But it is in there. The presentations you guys have, I don't think it's chopped off at the bottom. I don't know why it chopped off down here on mine, but anyways, you can definitely get them to the mailbox. It may not be in the memo, but we know that the IRS specifically has quoted this IRM section and said we're not going to send them to your mailbox. So, and actually, I think where the mailbox thing is it might be in the we're not faxing transcripts anymore. So, next step, the unredacted transcript bonus material. How to get the IRS unredacted transcript. So there's been a lot of confusion about this. So what you have to do is call the IRS PPL PPS line, whatever you refer to it as, and they're the same thing, and request them using a 2848 or an 8821 that is on file, or you can fax it directly. It's actually in the IRS's directions that you can fax the 2848 on the spot. Okay, 8821 isn't listed, but people are currently getting them, so we listed it here. We recommend using NQ to connect to the IRS in less than 3 minutes. For a free NQ trial, sign up here, and it's at callnq.com/tax help software. Gives you 100 free minutes to try the service out. We've heard great feedback from everybody on it. It is a paid service. It's not a paid THS service. It's a paid call NQ service, but everybody has really liked it. One thing on the POA I'll bring up here. So my dad called last night and he had to recall back. He had NQ, so it wasn't a big deal. But the first guy he talked to would not send my dad some transcripts because he didn't know the middle initial of the taxpayer. I'd never heard that one before, but okay, we all come up with our own different reasons. So the third bullet point, once the IRS sends the transcripts to your secure mailbox, verify that they have arrived by using eService Mailbox open on your computer. What we actually recommend is if you're going to request transcripts, log into the IRS manually, open up the eService Mailbox. It's in the TDS section, or you can go directly to the mailbox through the link on the IRS page. Get in there and then refresh it every 5 seconds when the IRS says they do it. Because when the IRS says they put it in your account, it's there near instantaneously. I mean, within seconds. Problem is, if you hang up and go, hey, thanks for the help, and then try to get the transcripts out of the mailbox and they're not there, then you have to call back. That's why we recommend you log in first. Now, the good news is once you get them in the mailbox, even if you open them up and look at them, you got to run the THS Mailbox downloader. It will download it into the software. Just make sure if you're downloading transcripts for somebody that you already have that social security number listed in the dashboard. So they have to be added. The transcript will still download and you can still find it in File Explorer. The problem is if you get transcripts for John Smith and John Smith isn't in your software, it just puts them in the File Explorer. It doesn't import them anywhere because there isn't anywhere to import them to. We don't automatically add a new person if you get new transcripts because we don't know their name, or we would. So restrictions to this. And when you do run the THS Mailbox downloader, once the transcripts are downloaded, it also generates an updated report. Okay. Not all the staff at the IRS have been briefed on the new policy, so you may have to call until you get someone who knows how. These are the restrictions. The IRS will not send an unredacted transcript for years that have an original return filed. Telling them that an unredacted transcript is needed for an amendment works sometimes, but not always. Also, I had somebody the other day tell the IRS, well, I think they have identity theft. Okay, boom. That was the wrong move, because the second they said that, and they didn't really think that, they were just trying to convince the IRS to send it to them. The IRS put an identity theft lock on the entire account. Do not tell the IRS it's identity theft unless it is. The second you do that, you can't pull transcripts electronically. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I'm all for a little bit of fibbing here or there to get what you need, but don't use the identity theft excuse. Okay. In the IRS policy memo, that's the one we showed, the IRS states only the current and prior 2 years will be provided if an original return was not filed. Okay. Skipping to the last one. The outbound faxing of tax data from the IRS is set to stop in early March or possibly the end of tax season. We've seen conflicting information coming from the IRS. The original date of February 4th, 2019 was postponed due to the shutdown. Okay. I think honestly they're going to wait till April. I saw something that they were going to try to do it in March, but it didn't work. So this is the end of the presentation. We have two demos, one for Get Transcripts and the other one for the mailbox downloader. I'm going to go ahead and try to do those now. Mitch, do you have anything you want to add before we try that?
Just a reminder that it's only going to work through computer audio. You'll only
Yeah.
be able to listen to the video.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll send Mitch these links as soon as we're done, so you can watch them at your own convenience as well. Also, feedback on the clarity. We've tried some new things, and in Mitch's test, these are the clearest web, you can see with great detail. If your computer is blurry on any of these presentations, it may be a bandwidth issue, and you may want to try downloading them from YouTube, which will take a while, but then they'll be on your computer and there won't be any lag. So without further ado, I'm going to play this, and I will be available. Matter of fact, I'll start looking at some of the questions and maybe answering them during the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and try this, Mitch.
Go for it.
And there you go.